Contracts. We're going to talk about contracts. Obviously, that's what this class is for, but a contract is made up of so much more than just a residential purchase agreement or a residential listing agreement or a vacant land. Anyway, it's made up of so much more than that. That is just the start. That's the first phase of the contract. But the contract itself obviously moves in a lot of different directions once you have sat down and written it up. There's lots of amendments, addendums, counteroffers, all kinds of things that have to be done. And so when we talk about contract training, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to walk you through the process of a contract. So there are things that we refer to as we go through it. But last Monday, for those of you that were on it, or I guess even for those of you that weren't here, last Monday, we talked about how to prepare your contract and your offer for presentation, and the things that you need, all the way from obviously the purchase agreement itself, all the way through the lender information or the proof of funds or whatever it was. And we talked about how to prepare and put together the perfect offer so that when you sent it out, you had a good chance of getting it accepted. That's what we all want right now. We don't want to fuss with a lot of things on the front end because we want to make it as close to what the seller was looking for as we feel, or as our buyer feels, is necessary to get his or her offer accepted. So guess what? We put together such a good offer last Monday that we got it signed. They accepted it. Yay. Oh no, that's hooray.
Good.
So I ought to learn how to read right. So now what? So we've got the offer accepted, and now we're going to walk through the process of what you do after that is. Now it's kind of a long process. You guys thought that once you got an offer accepted, you could sit back and wait for your check. And I don't think you guys thought that, but I know that clients, or some of our clients, think that. They think you put a sign up in the front yard, it's sold in a week, and now we just all wait. And that is not the case. You know that's not the case. Your client probably realizes that's not the case, but it genuinely is filled with a whole list of things that need to be taken care of afterwards. And we're going to walk through that process a little bit, referring to the contract when we need to and when it applies. So now what? Oh, yeah, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for closing. All right, so our offer, our counter offers, our addendums, our contingency, everything is executed. And when I say executed, I'm talking about full signatures from both sides. You don't have a contract unless you have two sides agreeing to all the same things. So you can't have an offer that's been signed by everybody and a counter offer that's only been signed by one party, or an addendum or a contingency. That nothing can be signed by only one party. This is called a bilateral agreement, which means that there are two parties necessary to make it happen. So when I refer to an executed contract, that is what we're referring to. Make sense so far? And the signatures, people ask me all the time about signatures. Well, do they have to fill it out the way it's filled out on the thing? Well, a signature is a signature. My signature doesn't look very much like my name. Okay, if my name is Terry Ryan, and probably 50% of you could not figure that out if you saw my signature. So a signature is a signature. The contract is a contract. The lenders will go by what it says in the contract because they know that everybody's signatures are different and some of them are skewed and things. Now I do at least have a couple of letters in my signature and things. I'm not one of those people that just put a squiggly bar at the end of my first initial or something. But anyway, if that was my signature, that's my signature. So when everything is signed, everything is signed. Now, part of the offer, and if you remember this from last Monday, or if not, if you just realize it because you've done offers before, when you download the RPA, the residential purchase agreement, it comes with an agency form. That's what we call it. It is the disclosure regarding agency relationships. The PRBS, which is the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. And the CCP, which is California Consumer Protection, and the FHDA, those all get downloaded with the contract itself. I think they have now, just not too long ago, squoze in the wire fraud. And so those forms that download, like we talked about last Monday, those forms that download all need to be signed. That's all part of your offer. All right, so we have all of that stuff taken care of. We've got everything done. The next little thing here is complete an intake sheet. And some of you have filled out intake sheets because you know where you are. Some of you are going to have a TC that does it or whatever. But I'm just going to flip over to it real quick, just so that you know what it looks like. This is an intake sheet. Now, the intake sheet has exactly kind of what it says on there. There's a contract date. Are there counters and addendums that we should be looking for? What's the estimated close of escrow? What's the sales price? What is the assessor's parcel number? What's the sales price, deposit amount, property address? That'd be a good thing to put in there. Seller's name, and is it held in a trust or a corporation? If yes or no, then provide a copy of the trust or corporate docs to show that that person is actually a signer. The addresses and where they want them, how they want the escrow package delivered. So you want to give it to the agent? Do you want to mail it? If you do want to mail it, if it's somebody who doesn't want to do, you know, if they as a seller, the seller is going to need to have part of it signed in front of a notary, so e-signatures and things don't work. But how do we want sellers' things taken care of? You may not know that to start out with. That'll be up to phone calls maybe to the agent, because to the other agent, because it doesn't identify that on the offer itself. Buyer's name, hopefully you have all this information because you're representing the buyer in this case. The lender, the loan officer that's taking care of it, the phone number, the email. Is it involved in an HOA? Because escrow is not going to know this. They don't want to scramble around looking and find out later on in the transaction that there's an HOA involved. The management company, the phone number. Is it on a septic system or not? Is there solar involved or not? Is there a HERO loan program in place or PACE or one of the home improvement energy efficient type programs that are out there? Who's the title company? Who's the rep? Is there an NHD ordered? Home warranty, termite? We don't have to read all these, but then here's you, or here's the other agent actually, and then here's you, you're the selling agent. What are the commissions that were posted in the MLS and agreed to in the contract? And that intake sheet is to accompany all of the other information, like the contract and things, as it goes to escrow. So, open order with a TC right off the bat. Now, I'm not telling you that you have to use a TC. Okay, by the way, that's if you're going to use a TC, they need to be involved in it from the first. That being said, remember that the TC is not the agent representing this whole deal. You are. So although you may ask the TC to get some of these papers signed for you and things, it's not up to them to figure out a way to generate them and get it taken care of and explain it to the buyer or explain it to the seller or whatever. The TC's responsibility is to make sure that you have all of your paperwork throughout the transaction complete and signed and in place by the time you're ready to close. And so and the TC means transaction coordinator. So what they're trying to do is coordinate the transaction. They're not negotiating any part of it. They're not making any decisions with regards to extensions, with regards to amendments or addendums or anything. That is not what they do. That is what you do as the agent representing the buyer. All right, so we open escrow, and that's an easy process. Generally, you take that intake sheet that was filled out, and you take the offer and counter offers and addendums and contingencies, whatever was involved in making that a complete offer, and you email that to escrow. Now, we have 5 escrow divisions within our company, so it makes it easy for you. They're spread out all over the place, so it's easy to get to and easy to get information to. The one that's closest to you is the easiest one to use usually, but any one of them it's all spearheaded by Kelly. She's the manager of all the escrow divisions, and she works with all the escrow officers closely to make sure that everything happens for you. It's easier for you sometimes, or your client sometimes, to go with one or the other because they're closer in proximity. And that's up to you to make those decisions. Disposition of the EMD. The EMD is your deposit. It's an earnest money deposit. That's what EMD stands for. And the disposition is that in your contract, it says that there will be a deposit. Or won't be. You can leave it. You can put no deposit down if you want. It's not a great idea, but you can. So we have an earnest money deposit, but we need to have something happen with it. Now, is it a check? Are they bringing in a cashier's check? When I say they, I'm talking about the buyer. Are they going to do a wire transfer like it defaults to in the contract itself? They do have other options. Cash is not one of them. Anything that's done other than a California bank cashier's check or a wire could have a delay on the front end because escrow cannot proceed until other checks or money orders or anything like that clear. And so the best ideas are to bring it in the form of a cashier's check if they want to handle it that way, or the very best idea is to do it the way the contract reads and defaults to, which is wire transfer. Once you've opened escrow, you can get a copy of wiring instructions, or you can have escrow email to your clients a copy of escrow or of wiring instructions. And from there, they will know what they have to do. Escrow will watch for the wire transfer to come in. And once that comes in, then the rest of the process can start. You know, you open escrow one day, but I can tell you that all of the other things that have to go on with an escrow do not start until step 2 is taken care of. And step 2 is that disposition of the earnest money. That money has to be here in order for them to move forward and process. We have people sometimes say, well, gosh, I haven't even gotten my opening package yet. Well, we haven't gotten the earnest money deposit yet. So it's that holds up that process. So be sure and make your buyers aware, and then double check with escrow to see if they've received it or not. But make sure that your buyers are aware that this is what we agreed to. We agreed to within 3 days, unless you marked a box and needed some extra time, within 3 days, the earnest money deposit will be in the hands of escrow, one way or the other. All right. So on days 1 through 3, it says, and this, by the way, let me just back up one step. This is on these numbers and things are based on 2 things. One is they're based on the contract itself, on the RPA itself. It says how long do you have to do this? How long should this process take? But the other thing it's basing it on is it's basing it on a 30 to 45 day standard contract length of time for close of escrow. Nothing funny going on. Nothing else that we have to work our way through. This is just kind of a standard. So obviously, as you go through a closing, you could, because of the type of property you bought or something you had, could have other issues arise. But this is a basic outline of what you have to do in order to get through a pretty standard contract. All right, order NHD. Now that's going to be ordered by the listing agent. You will have asked for that on your offer when you wrote the offer. And they have to get that to you within that 7-day time frame that's set aside to receive all reports and disclosures from the seller. So if you order it, and generally speaking, when you order it, you get it the same day, unless you order it late in the day. They have those in some kind of a digital file, and all they have to do is type in the APN and then a name of a seller so they know who to bill. And almost immediately you get that. So if you ordered one right this minute while we were sitting here chatting, you'd have it before the class was over. So it's not something that's going to take a long time, but you need to get it ordered because it is due within that first 7 days. Okay, order a wood pest inspection if that's called for in the contract. Order that immediately because the termite companies or the wood pest inspection companies and things can't just drop everything and run out and do yours. So if that is called for by contract, make sure that that's ordered right away. Now, is it your responsibility? I don't know. It depends on what the contract said. If you've got a buyer paid wood pest inspection, then it's up to you representing the buyer to get that taken care of. If it's a seller paid wood pest inspection, then it's up to the seller to get it taken care of. But it's up to you as the buyer's agent to make sure that actually happened. Did you get the wood pest inspection in yet? That's one of the reports that would be due for us to review within the first 7 days. Loan application process. So this is obviously assuming that they're getting a loan. Loan application process. With a good lender, that application process is already moving along when they do their pre-qualification and their pre-approval. So some of that's already taken care of, and that's not up to you to go back and double check and find out whether or not the buyer has gotten all their information in. But it's a good idea to check with the lender to make sure that that process is happening. And there may be times when he says, you know what, I've asked the buyer for this and this, and they just can't seem to get it to me. Can you give them a call and see if they'll listen to you? And that process may happen. That may get things moving along. It may keep things moving along. The lender, the loan officer that's helping you in things, they are obviously an extremely important part of getting this deal closed. So keeping close tabs with them, touch base with them. Some of the lenders out there will come out with, we have a lending group, a lending support group within our company that is, that's just part of us. And if we go through them, that whole transition time becomes a lot easier and things. If by chance a buyer comes to you with some lender that is, you know, out of a different city or anything else, but somebody they know or somebody they've worked with in the past or something else, sometimes the buyer is going to come to you with a different lender. We cannot make them go with our lender. We can explain to them how convenient that would be, but we cannot make them go with our lender. We might even explain to them that they might be able to save some money. However, we cannot make them go with our lender. So understand that it's our responsibility to present that as an option and talk to them about the advantages and the disadvantages. And hopefully it started back when you got your pre-qualification and pre-approval done. So if that process has already started, then you're in good shape, but make sure that that process is moving along. You know, within the first 5 to 7 days, an appraisal should be ordered. And doesn't mean it's going to be done yet, because now the appraiser has to, you know, it has to go through the system, the AMS, appraisal management system that was so wisely set up by the legislator a while back, so that this all had to move through management wheel of fortune, I guess. I'm not sure exactly who chooses who, how, but we used to be able to work with appraisers that we knew or that were in our area, so they knew the area as well as we did, and we felt like we got stronger appraisals that way. Because if I lived in Menifee, California, and I worked with a Menifee appraiser, my chances of them knowing the area were better than having somebody out of no offense, LA, but out of Los Angeles County or out of Orange County or out of San Diego County or something. We just know that they don't know as much about specific things that are going on in our area. So that doesn't happen anymore. The appraisal is ordered. Hopefully it's ordered within the first week, but probably not done for as much as 10 days later than that, which is why we're pushing for it earlier. It's going to take time to it's going to take time to get this appraisal taken care of. You're going to have to make arrangements to perhaps meet them at the property, perhaps help them with some comps, whatever it is that you have to help them with. But let's get that taken care of right away. Touch base with your lender and just ask if it's been ordered. You know, sometimes the way I look at it, if an appraisal order is being stalled for any reason, in my mind, and maybe this is my negative realtor mind, I don't know, the little skepticism sinks in, and the longer it takes to get an appraisal ordered, not necessarily done, but ordered, the more red flags I think there might be on the other end of it, because I know a lender is as hard as they're working on things, they want to get the deal closed too, but they have to put together a package that's going to be approved by an underwriter and sold later on to some company with significantly more holdings and things. And so that being the case, they're trying to put together the best possible. And sometimes they don't want to charge the buyer for the appraisal until, thank you. Excuse me just a second. Okay, I'm back. We had a couple of people talking loud enough to be heard on the recording, which will play nice, except for that it really didn't fall into anything we were talking about. Anyway, so by now, of course, escrow has gotten their earnest money deposit thing taken care of. They've ordered their prelim from whatever title company you instructed them to order it from, or whatever it said in the offer itself. That's where they get their instruction. And you will get a package of escrow instructions that are going to your buyer. And basically the instruction, and it says this right on the RPA, it says residential purchase agreement and escrow instruction. So that just means that the escrow instructions are coming directly off of that. They're not doing anything different with it. If you said the sale was $565,000, that's the sale they used. If you say that it's supposed to close on such and such a date, that's the date they use. Those instructions all come out exactly the way you've written it. You should review those and review the commission, because you're going to get a commission sheet that's in that same package. And when you review those, if everything is okay, then escrow can go ahead and get it to whoever it is they're supposed to get it to. Now, in my situation, and everybody's situation is different, but if my buyers are local, I like to have them come into the office to sign escrow instructions. See, and that sounds like an important reason to come into the office for them too. I like to do that for a couple of reasons. One is I like to show off our office a little bit and show that they have some backup support and show that we're actually a brick and mortar in existence building type thing. The other thing is that if we have any issues with the escrow instructions, normally we don't, but if we had any issue, we can remedy it right there and then. We can get it taken care of, get the buyer understanding what it is. If there's something going on with the deal that I happen to not quite understand, we have the people that we can ask sitting right there in the office. So if we get those things taken care of, that will probably be around the end of the first week, assuming that the earnest money deposit is in place and things. It takes a title company about 3 days or 4 days to get out the title report, which escrow needs in order to verify property and things. And so when those two things are done, they can initiate the escrow instructions and the commission instructions, and we can get those taken care of. When you get your commission sheet, by the way, that needs to be signed by Randy. And so if you get it, I know it might have your name on it or something else, but if you send those off, if you email them to Randy, you can send them to me if you want to, and I'll get with Randy. Anyway, we can get them, but we need a commission instruction signed by the broker. All right, so seller disclosures, talked about that a couple minutes ago. The disclosures by contract says that they will be to the buyer's agent no later than day 7. And those will include like the transfer disclosure statement, that's what TDS is, or the ESD, which is an exempt seller disclosure. There are a few entities that are exempt from a TDS. The SPQ, which is the seller's property questionnaire. PDR, property disclosure report, NHD, whatever it happens to be. WPI, which is the well and septic and property identifiers and things. The SPSA, which is the seller's buyer and seller's seller. Yes, statement of buyer seller advisory and AVID. All right, all of those things need to be signed. We have the 2 additional forms. I'll sneak down to those real quick. I think one of them is client acknowledgement, but we are independently owned and operated. Okay, that is true. Each of the Century 21 Masters offices are owned and operated by somebody other than Century 21 corporate or something. So they are individually owned and operated. Randy is the broker, owner, management, corporate person, whatever. Anyway, he is the one that signs that. Your clients sign it so that they understand that each are independently owned and operated. I think that helps on 2 things. One is it helps them understand that this is the guy we have to go to if we have any real problems. Rather than calling Century 21 in New Hampshire or something and saying, hey, you know what? Charity did not get me or whatever. Anyway, so we want to push it off on Randy whenever we can, right? Anyway, the other thing is affiliated business arrangement. This says that we are affiliated with some other businesses. What are those other businesses? Well, 21st Century Escrow, maybe. Obviously, your property address that you're selling would go in here. And we have 21st Century Escrow, which we love to have you use. It's, whenever possible. And when you're doing your RPA, and we talked about this when we were doing contracts, but don't write in there seller's choice or something like that. Go ahead and ask for 21st Century Escrow. You may or may not get it. It may be countered out, but unless they have identified a separate escrow in their MLS or something, there's no reason that we should shoot an arrow towards that target and see if we can get the escrow. 21st Century Lending. Obviously, we just talked about that a minute ago, but we have our own lending agency. And we do have 21st Century NHD powered by MyNHD. There's the prices that are based in there. So we know that we're competitive with everybody else on everything from lending to escrow to NHDs or whatever. Now, those won't always work, but it is necessary to let them know that we do have those things not only available, but that we might be using them in this contract. All right, let's go back here for a minute. Anybody get motion sickness while I scan through these things, or are we good?
I'm good.
All right, that's good. I wonder if I should scan through them more slowly, just, but anyway. So, all right, perfect. So we get all of these things signed and put together, and sometimes these are going to be things. Remember, I told you earlier in this little checklist and things that you might have a TC. Okay, so these disclosures are not negotiated items. So literally, we could get our TC to get some of these signed and things. But that being said, Has the TC ever been into the property? Not likely, so they wouldn't have an avid. That would be up to you to take care of. Do they know whether or not it's on a well, or whether it's on a septic, or whether it needs other things taken care of? Probably not. Seller's property questionnaire, that could probably be something they got for you because it's not a negotiated item. However, I usually try to get that signed early on. It gives me a reason for contact, makes me look smart in front of my clients, which I need all the help I can get. And the same thing with the TDS. Now, what's happening to us, when I say us, I'm talking as a realtor industry. What's happening a little bit with all of the electronic signature things going on. And by the way, I'm not opposed to electronic signatures, so don't throw anything at me or anything. But I think those are wonderful, and I think they help a lot in putting together a deal and making it easy for remote signings for people that don't live in the house or whatever. So I'm good with all of that. The problem that we're having as realtors is we're getting more and more lawsuits, or at least grievances and pro standards violations and whatever they can think of to do over the little thing that I just talked about, which is the fact that they sign online. And how did they do that? Well, I told my TC to send over the whatever for them to sign. And within, less time than it took the TC to load it, they've docu-signed it from their phone or whatever and sent it back to you and really have no idea what it said. Now that's on them, kind of, you would think. However, our fiduciary requires that we explain those things to them. So if I'm going to send something out for an e-signature, I need to send it out, and then I need to give them a call a little bit later, find out if they received it, find out if they had any questions about it, highlight the things that you think were important in the house. When I was in the house, I noticed that there was a water stain in the ceiling. All right, so that's something that a seller should actually be talking about, but a seller sometimes has had the water stain so long, and maybe they've gotten the roof repaired since and all kinds of things. They just didn't bother to repaint or whatever or retexture or whatever they needed to do. And so they don't think to disclose that. So it's up to us to be sure to bring those kind of things to their attention. That's why I like to do those when I'm in the house. I know it's a little old fashioned, but I like to do it when I'm there because it gives me a chance to talk with them about things that might be an issue later on. And I would much rather jump that hurdle up front than I would on the other end of things. In the TDS, it asks you if you have water heater strapping and things, and you understand those things. Well, if I was in the house, I know that the water heater is or is not strapped. If I'm in the house, I can say, oh, I didn't notice a carbon monoxide detector. Yes, Miriam.
Yes, I have a question. Let's say that we do that remotely, and the seller, we call the seller, and then after he already filled out everything and signed, he tell us that something is going on with the house. So can we write it ourselves, or if it's already signed, did we write it on it, or we have to send it again to do the whole thing so they can disclosure that?
Yeah, that's a good question. If theirs is the only signature on it, they can sign it. I mean, they can go back and change something above their own signature. You can't. However, you could note it in your Avid.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Okay. Yeah, that way it kind of takes you off it. It says the seller was trying to lie about something, or the buyer was. You're representing the buyer. So in your Avid, I would definitely write down anything that you saw in the house.
Yeah, but no, write it on the signs.
Yeah, the only person that can change above a signature is the signatory themselves. The person that signed it. If there's no other signatures on it, then they could go back and make adjustments.
Okay.
That's a good question. Good question. Okay. So let's go on to, now we've got all of those. I like to get all I like to get all those forms together, sit down with my client, and then we work on investigations. Now, some people call for an investigation, home inspection, for instance, right off the bat. But if we have 17 days from the executed offer date to complete any investigations. So during that 17 days, if we noted that there were roof problems, if we noted that there was anything going on, then those investigations need to happen within the first 17 days. As soon as we notice those things, we should let the buyer know whether that could be a problem, and do you want to have that investigated? And if they say yes, then get that ordered as quick as you can, because it needs to be completed by day 17, not ordered by day 17, completed by day 17. So all of these things should happen in the first few days. Don't wait until the end to get things taken care of. All right, so.
Harry, I have another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so if we already done the inspection within the 17 days, but we don't remove the inspection contingency, can we take more time, or we have to send it right away?
Well, if you're representing the buyer's agent and you do your investigations and you did them within the 17 days or whatever that time was, maybe it was 10 days or something like that, and the buyer is content that everything is taken care of, then that's also you getting a commitment from your buyer that they had the time, they did the investigations, and they accept the property. So that contingency removal works for both sides. I want to get it removed as the buyer's agent as soon as possible, because it says that the buyer likes the property for whatever reason. If it drags out and doesn't get taken care of, a good seller's agent would probably give you a notice to perform. And a notice to perform would indicate that you had 2 days to complete your investigations, or the seller would have the right to cancel the agreement. And in order to change that, you would have to fill out a modification of times and terms and extend the contingency period for the investigations. That's the paperwork. Does that make sense?
So do we have to wait until seller and buyer agree with the request for repairs, or we can send it before?
Okay, well, let's talk about the request for repairs for now and see if that answers your question. All right, so once we've done the investigations, we have the opportunity and the option, and notice I threw in the option of a buyer filling out, well, of course, we fill it out for them, but a buyer producing a request for repairs. I saw this, I saw that, our home inspector saw this, it saw that, and we can write up a repair request based on the things that either popped up in our own investigations, or on the inspection of the home inspector, or something that the seller said. Maybe the seller said, well, I have a cracked picture window, and he discloses it. Well, if your buyer goes ahead and buys it with a cracked picture window, he can, but he might ask for that as a repair request. So he or she and you prepare the request for repairs and submit it to the selling agent. Now, talk about that for just a second, because a repair request does not have to, by law or by contract, be responded to. If I were representing the seller and you were representing the buyer and you sent me a repair request, I could just ignore it. If your buyer continued on, then he has continued on with the contract, still looking to close it in 45 days or whatever, and has pretty much just walked by that. If you don't receive a notice, I don't have on this little list, I don't have notice to perform underneath request for repairs, because it's not contractual, so we cannot make them respond. It's courteous and things for them to respond, even if they're going to check the little box that says we're not taking care of anything, then that's okay too. But I would call the agent and say, you know what, did you get our repair request? And he goes, oh yeah, but we're not going to do anything about it. Okay, well then I go back to my buyer and say, you know, all of that little list that we made up, we asked for help, but they said no. And so do you want to move forward with the deal? Or they can check the little box that's on there that says that they'll fix something else. Or they can check the little box on there that says that they, instead of fixing anything, they will give you a $2,000 adjustment to the purchase price or a $2,000 credit at close of escrow. Well, whatever they do, they can do. But it should be handled. It's not a passive thing that if you just blow it off, that there doesn't need to be some kind of action taken by you. But the action is not contractual, so it doesn't require the notice to perform and things. Did any of those things answer your question?
Oh yeah, I'm so grateful for that answer. I thought they needed to repair things and see how it's going.
All right, perfect. All right, so on the contract itself, it says that you'll have full loan approval 17 days after acceptance. Now, we've talked about this before about business days and calendar days. Loan approval, well, anything where you're dealing with a legal entity that follows all of the normal hours of business, like a bank or a lender or something like that, their 17 days are calendar days. I mean, are business days, not calendar days. The others, like a home inspection or something, that is going to be business days because home inspectors work on weekends as well. And so if it is a normal situation for somebody to work during calendar days, then it's 17 days is calendar. When we're talking about a loan, we're talking about business days, which does not include Sunday. And so you have a few days in there that I don't know, I can't say that it gives you extra time, but it kind of does. So when you're looking at your contract, just take that into consideration, that when you're dealing with a lender or something, that you are dealing with Sundays being closed. If you don't have full loan approval, then at that point in time, the seller's agent could give you a notice to perform, and you would have to either remove that contingency or ask for an extension, or I guess bail on it if you can't get the loan together. But full loan approval requires, obviously, they can't give full loan approval without knowing the value of the property. So if you go back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, the appraisal has to be done right away. And that's what I was referring to when I was saying that appraisal should be ordered within the first 5 to 7 days or something, because it's probably going to take them 7 to 10 days to get that done. Well, that falls within the 17 days that it requires to get full loan approval. So if I'm not on track to get full loan approval within 17 days, and of course I've been in contact with my lender all the time, then I need to fill out a modification of terms and time and ask for an extension on that particular contingency. I can still remove all the other contingencies, but I can leave that one open. All right, contingency removals for all contract contingencies. All of the days that we talk about are all like in the days in that 17-day mark or something. So within that time, I'm pushing to get my buyer. I'm not twisting their arm or anything else, but I'm looking to try to get those contract contingencies removed. I want to get those things taken care of. Are you satisfied with the property? Are you satisfied with your investigation time? Are you satisfied with all of those things? Are you satisfied with the loan? Well, I haven't gotten approval yet. Okay, let's remove all of our contingencies except for the loan and ask for an extension on that. So there might be some things that you do different on the contingency removals. Feel free to give us a call if you have questions about what you can do or what you can't do or anything. We had one the other day. I got a call on the weekend, and I'm a calendar day person, so you can get a hold of me on weekends. But I got a call the other day that they were trying to remove contingencies, and they tried to remove all the contingencies except for they checked the little box on a loan contingency to leave that as an exception. So I want to remove all my contingencies except the loan contingency. And when they sent it to the other agent refused that. Okay, that between them and their seller, they decided that they didn't want to, they wanted all contingencies removed or none. All right. So I talked to the agent about where they were with their loan. Fortunately, he knew where they were with their loan and where they were with everything. And so we were kind of able to maneuver ourselves through that. But I'm just saying that they could at that point in time, because they've reached their contractual days by day 17. So on day 18, they literally could move forward with cancellation if they wanted to. All right. So these next couple of things are assuming that there were some things that had to be taken care of. So in your contract, if you wrote down that you wanted the seller to provide a wood pest inspection and a section 1 clearance. I understand that section 1 clearance, there are 2 clearances in termite work. I'll call it termite, but it is wood pest. Anyway, there are two different sections. One is a section 1, and a section 1 includes current infestation or damage as a result of infestation. All right, so sometimes you'll get fungus or dry rot or something on there. Well, that has been, there's been pests there in the past, and there could be pests there in the future and things, because it leaves an open crack in the wood on the fascia of the house or whatever it happens to be. And that is all section 1. Section 2 normally is more a preventative type thing. Okay, you have a patio that's a wooden patio, and the patio roof is attached to your house, and there's no space between it or anything. There's no termites and there's no damage currently, but the pest control people might bring that up as a possibility as a section 2. They also could bring up things like, without having a picture here to show you, you know, on a stucco house, how it comes down to about where the foundation is. And you can see that little break there that's concrete, where the stucco stops and the concrete keeps going. If by chance dirt, because of a planter box, because of just water erosion, because of whatever, if dirt is piled all the way up to the stucco, a section 2 item might be to remove that dirt or get it down to a level below where the stucco is, because the stucco is on wood frame. And if the dirt touches wood, there's a possibility for infestation. So those are just a couple. Sometimes a wood fence could be attached to a house, different things, but I'm not going to go through the list of all of those because probably I couldn't remember them all. But anyway, those repair items and things are divided into section 1 and 2. And generally speaking, if anybody writes up a repair request that includes wood pest work or anything else, those things need to be ordered by, you know, I ordered as soon as the rest of the contingencies are removed if I'm representing the seller. I don't want to do any work ahead of time, ahead of the 17 days, ahead of my contingency removals, because I want to make sure that the deal has a good chance of closing before I start spending seller's money. So if I'm representing the seller, that's what I'm looking to do. Same thing with septics. Okay, so we have properties in the hills and around and about and things that are on septic systems. Septic systems work fine as long as everything works in them. But your offer may require, for instance, if you're writing an FHA offer, the FHA offer would require a septic certification and a well certification if there's a septic and a well on the property. FHA wants to make sure that everything's working properly. FHA and VA are the same way. They want to make sure that all the things are working the way they're supposed to. Well, septic certifications and well certifications take a little bit of time. Again, you start those after your contingencies are removed, and you can get your septic, you order your septic cert and try to schedule it for after that. After your contingencies are removed, you can order your well certification. A well certification today takes about 10 days. So don't run it. So you don't want to run it too close to when it is. So if you're representing the buyer like we are, then I want to be pushing on the seller as to when they get those things taken care of. And if I'm representing the seller, the reason I'm putting those off is because I don't want money going out of my seller's pocket until such time as we know that the deal is really solid. All right, so within the next week or so after that, 21 to 25 days, all certifications are signed by the seller and the buyer. Certifications on the wood pests, certifications on the septic, certifications on the well, whatever. Surveys if necessary. Sometimes there are properties we sell that are on skewed property lines and things and in the hills and different things going on. And so sometimes they're not easily identifiable. If you're in a subdivision or a development of some kind where everybody knows exactly where the property line is, or maybe the developers put in fences or whatever, that's one thing. But if that's not the case, then we may need to have a surveyor go out there and find out where the property lines are, especially if you're buying a 5-acre property in the middle of nowhere. So we get those things taken care of. Oh, now we look here, it says another check with our TC. I know the TC is going to feel like you're bugging them anyway, because you're calling them every other day to ask them if they got this signed or that signed, or what do I need to do here, or blah, blah, blah. But you check, by this time we're day 25-ish, and we need to find out whether or not the file is ready for approval. I don't know about you, but when I've spent 30 days trying to get a deal, and probably longer than that when I count the showing times and things, when I'm trying to get a deal closed, I actually, and I'm probably the only one, but I actually like to get a paycheck, right? So even though I did this because I'm a nice guy and I wanted the client to be happy, because that's what we do this for, is because I like to see happy people, right? And I want to check. So I want to make, and guess what? My TC does too. So if I'm working with a TC, I want to make sure that he or she has my file ready for approval. And if there's anything that I need to go to my buyer for, or if there's anything I need to bug my seller's agent for, I'm prepared to do that. So then we talk to the buyers. Escrow has said, okay, the loan is they're getting ready to have loan docs and things. And they're going to give me and the buyer a estimated settlement statement. And I say estimated because at this point in time, they're saying that, I mean, it hasn't closed yet, but they're saying that this is about the amount of money you need to bring in order for us to close escrow. And you see that we're doing this between day 25 and 27 or something. We're still a few days away from a 30-day closing, but they need to get their money in because we need to know that it's there. And so they get it into escrow. Escrow has received their funds. They let the lender know that they're ready for docs. The docs will send out a CD, which is just basically it's kind of just it's a disclosure statement that says what their loan is. It's not the docs itself. It's a disclosure statement saying you were going to borrow $500,000. You're going to put $65,000 down. You were going to, we charged you this much for loan origination fee and this much for their funding fee, whatever it is. And they'll have all of their fees listed there. And the buyer looks at that and goes, oh my gosh. Or they say, okay, I understand that. That's what they were telling me and things. And they sign off the CD, which allows the lender to move forward on docs. Docs can be signed 3 days after the CD is signed. So you can see again, when you're looking at these days here, day 25 to day 27 on a 30 or so day escrow, we're getting right towards the end, but we still have a little bit of time to get things taken care of. Now, what I like to do is at the same time the buyers get their funds to escrow, I like to make arrangements to do a final walkthrough and property verification. Now this is written into the contract, but if you read the contract closely, if you read the RPA, it actually says that within 5 days of close of escrow, buyer may do a final walkthrough. It doesn't specify that they have to do a final walkthrough. Now, do we like to have them? Yes, absolutely. There is, in our paperwork, there is a final walkthrough. It's a verification of property condition is what the name of the report is. But basically, it is a final walkthrough. And it says, it says that this is the final walkthrough of the buyer and everything was found to be in good condition. And then there's a little word in there that's right at the very end of that sentence, and it says accept. And so when it comes to accept, then we found everything that we asked to be done. You know, we did a repair request, we did termites, we did all these things that we had in there. And everything is done except, and hopefully there are no exceptions. That's the way I like to write it. I like to just write no exceptions in that spot on the final walkthrough, because that kind of identifies the fact that we actually have something in there. Plus, I don't like blank spaces. So some people say, well, there were no exceptions, so I didn't put anything in there. Well, draw a line through it then. But make sure that there's something there that identifies the fact that we did a final walkthrough. If they don't want to do a final walkthrough, on that same piece of paper, the final walkthrough, the property verification, on that, there is a little box down at the bottom of all those lines that you can write things in if you have to. There's a little thing that says that the buyer waived the right. So check that box and get it signed anyway that says that they waived the right. So we at least let them know that per contract, they had the right to do a final walkthrough and they decided they didn't want to. So sign here. Okay, so then the buyers come in a couple days later because the CD's been out for 3 days now. The buyer comes in a couple of days later, signs loan docs. Loan docs are signed with a notary in place so that we know that all the right people are there and stuff. And they get the signed loan docs get bundled by escrow. They get, in some way or another, they get back to the lender. Some lenders will do table fundings where all you have to do is fax them over the signed loan docs. Others require wet signatures in front of them and things. And so it's whatever the lender says. This is one of those places that I've said before, and I'll say it again, and that is this is the golden rule. We have two of them in life. You know, one of them is to do unto others, golden rule. And the other one is he who has the gold makes the rule. So whatever that specific lender wants you to do, that's the way you have to do it. If I mean, the other day, one of our agents came running back in here after, or came not in here, but one of the other offices came dashing back. And I said, "God, you look all tired." "Well, I've already been to San Bernardino this morning." I said, "Wow, what were you doing in San Bernardino?" "Well, I had to run the loan docs over because they got signed on the weekend and things, and we wanted to make sure we could." Yes, that happens. Sometimes they only want, I didn't put that in this list of things that you have to do because it doesn't happen every time. But anyway, they have to get back to the lender, however the lender wants them back. All right, so the loan will fund. Sometimes it's a same day funding. Sometimes it's a next day funding. Depends on what time everything gets happened. You know, if everything happens so it's bright and early in the morning, then sometimes the lender can get it funded the same day. Sometimes not. Expect it to happen. Don't make that part of your, you know, don't make that part of your guarantee, because then you'll just get fooled about half the time. But that could happen. But the loan will fund. Now the loan funds to the title company. And the title company goes through with everything and they say, okay, the loan funded. Escrow called us and said that they have the cash in hand. They're ready to go. And so with the funds from the loan, we have enough money to close this deal. Let's take it over to the county recorder's office and then get it over to the recorder's office in whatever mode or method they have. Some people actually still carry over a whole bundle of contracts and things, and somebody reviews them or whatever. Anyway, they have their different methods, which is okay. And the title company will get it recorded in the county that they're dealing at. The county recorder offices, most of the time, I think most of them are open Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday all day and part of a day on Friday, but they will do special recordings on Fridays or just before holidays or just anyway, they have their different ways of recording and confirmation. So recording means that the county office, whatever county you're in, has recorded it as being a transferred title. And they will confirm all of that. That happens on, in this case, day 30. Escrow will then wait, but they probably aren't waiting. They're probably preparing everything just in case, but they cannot, because they cannot disperse funds until after they receive the wire from title. Because remember, I said a couple minutes ago that the lender funds to the title company. So the title company is now sitting on those funds and they won't release them until after it's closed and recorded. And so when they get confirmation, they can send a wire to escrow. And when escrow actually receives the wire and shows receipt of it, not hears from somebody saying, oh yeah, we wired those funds. No, it's after they show it as certified in the account, then they can disperse funds. So until they have that money, they can't pay you a commission. Okay, just thought I'd tell you that. They also can't pay anybody else that they are supposed to, like termite people or anything else. All right, so once that happens, and only once that happens, turn over keys to the new owner. Now I know people are going to say, well, what if we have a seller staying in possession, or what if we have buyers moving in early and all that kind of stuff? Those things will all be recorded, documented, they'll be in writing. So whatever that contract change is, that'll be identified. I don't encourage all of that. I don't encourage giving keys to an owner until it's his house or her house. I don't encourage people staying. That's not anything I even bring up as an option. If somebody begs me at a later date, I can talk to somebody else about it and see if the seller is amenable to that, or if the buyer is amenable to waiting a few extra days to get in, and we can have that discussion. But I don't bring that up as a possibility to start out with. I don't even mention it. I wait until somebody comes to me begging. No, maybe it's not begging, but anyway. And in order to turn over the keys to the new owner, I'm representing the buyer, right? Well, hopefully I've been smart enough to figure out how I'm going to get those keys. Is one going to be left in a lockbox and the other agent's going to leave a lockbox on the door? Are you going to drop them off at my office? Do I have to swing by your office? Are you going to hide them under a rock? What are we going to put them inside all but one? I'll leave the front door key in a lockbox and the other keys will all be put in the drawer. I don't know what those are. They're different in every case. Make sure you understand what those are. Make sure you put that together in the minds of everybody so that the seller knows that they're leaving them in the door next to the range, and the remotes are going to be just inside the door in the garage. Whatever it happens to be, make sure those are. You want to sound smart. You want to sound professional. You don't want to scramble at the last minute. So make sure you. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but what is there a specific document in these kind of sections that one could include for just in situations as far as like the seller didn't move out or the tenant that they had didn't move out, to turn in the keys, that you can kind of execute it in this kind of a scenario?
Yes, there are some things that need to be taken care of. We probably need to discuss that a little bit separately because it's kind of it depends on the scenario, obviously, but if somebody didn't move out in time, we would actually know that. For instance, when we did our final walkthrough 5 days ahead of time, if people weren't out, if they weren't moving out, then that would be the time to identify how we're going to solve that problem, or whether we're not going to close on the house. You know, if my buyer says, well, I don't care, well, then have the paperwork signed that says that they're going to allow seller in possession. SIP is one of the forms. So the seller will maintain possession of the house, whether they're living in it or whether they have a tenant in it. They can, if everybody agrees, if the seller wants to stay in the house, they fill out the seller in possession form. It has to be signed by the buyer, because remember, this is a bilateral contract, so it requires both signatures. But if the buyer says, well, that's okay, I want the house bad enough that I'm willing to go ahead and wait a couple of weeks or whatever it is, then we get that paperwork signed, the SIP it's called. If we are going to accept a property with a tenant in possession, and now I'm going to become the new landlord, then there's a TOP, which is basically tenant occupied property addendum, that says that that my tenants are going to stay in the house. And if that's the case, then I need to get all my listing stuff taken care of. Or not my listing, my contract set up between the tenant and the new owner, right? Because now he's the new landlord or she's the new landlord. So by the time you get to turning over keys and dispersing funds and all that, you better have had that negotiated back in the deal somewhere, if that makes sense to you. If we're getting close to close and we don't have people even attempting to move, I'm in touch with the other agent saying, hey, you know what, my buyers have a moving van, they're ready to rock and roll. And they're saying, well, we can't get out yet. Then something has to be discussed then. And remuneration could be discussed as part of that. Well, if the seller's going to stay in possession, then he needs to pay $200 a day, because my loan starts the day my loan funds. That's when my interest rate starts building and things. So as a buyer, I'm already accumulating debt on something that I can't even get into. So that kind of thing, that kind of situation and circumstance should be discussed well before we get to recording and confirming. I don't want it recorded and confirmed if my people can't have possession, or if we have not negotiated something else earlier. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, and I was kind of looking at this as kind of a checklist, what you have been sharing with us. And
Yes.
That's what I was kind of thinking I may need to add like a one-liner or two-liner over here as a checklist.
Yeah, and you know what, but by the way, and I think there's a little disclaimer here, and I could have discovered, I could have written that in at the first when I typed this up. But see this disclaimer, it says the times and circumstances often change during the course of the transaction. One of our many responsibilities to make sure that contract dates are met and amended to new times and dates that both buyer and seller agree upon. This list is a guide, not a guarantee. So kind of what it is this is a basic deal, a basic transaction that has a start date and an end date, and that we're working on to try to accomplish that. This list would probably have to be half of a booklet long to take care of all of the things that might need to be taken care of. It's just that these are some basics that tell you the things you need and what you need to be looking for along the way. It's good to bring up those other things, Benny. Nothing wrong with that question, but there's probably, you say add it to my list, I'd probably have to give you another 30 items to add to your list of things that could happen. I've got, just day before yesterday, 2 of the agents out of the Hemet office were in here early in the Hemet office early in the morning, and they said they were headed to, I said, what you up to so early? And they said, well, we're headed to Rialto. I said, Rialto, what are you doing there? Well, we've got a deal they're co-agents on it. So we've got a deal with an 88-year-old man in Rialto. And he has got some issues moving stuff out of his house. So we're going over with the truck and stuff to help him put some stuff in storage. And his daughter's going to meet us and all that. Well, I don't have checklists for any of those kind of things, but they'll happen. They just will. And sometimes the house will be vacant and it'll be broken into, and there are going to be other changes that need to be made and other things that need to be negotiated. So you're right, there are a lot of things that could be on a list, but kind of with this list, what I wanted to make sure of is that you knew the basics to getting a transaction closed. But I wish this was all that was going to happen.
I agree with you 100%. I was just kind of trying to have a checklist in my mind, not necessarily a separate one for different scenarios and stuff. So that's why I was asking that question.
Yes, no, nothing wrong with the question. It was absolutely a good question. It's just that, yeah, this checklist would be huge. We'd be here this would be an 8-hour training class. And we'd have to have lunch brought in or something like that to go through all of the things that are going to happen to you. Because you're gonna sell a lot of property, and 50% of them are going to just go like clockwork, and 20% are just going to have a little niche or two, and 30% you're going to pull your hair out. So anyway, all right. So after recording, keys go there. PC to upload the last of the paperwork. I don't know what that would be right now. That list could be long, hopefully not. One thing to remember, when you're representing the buyer, you have a hammer, okay? And that sounds funny, but you have a little bit of leverage in the deal because it's up to you to close a loan, or it's up to you to pull a loan if you had to, and you don't want to do that, of course. But that is a possibility that you could get to. And once you close on a house where the sellers are moving to Oregon, and you find out that there were contractual things that were not taken care of, I would like to see how you would go about getting them back from Oregon, or getting a check written or anything to somebody who didn't want to be cooperative. So I want to make sure as many of those things are done. I don't want that call after we close. I want the call that says, "Oh, Terry, we love our new home." I don't want the call that says, "You know, we got in here and this was taken. They took their dishwasher at the last minute. They took this, they took that." And we get that call, and those happen occasionally too. That's not written in this checklist. But that's why we need to stay in the middle of this transaction all the way through. So your TC or you have loaded things into SkySlope at this point in time. Compliance, which we have a couple of nice ladies that go through and review all these things so that it's kind of a double check to protect you down the road. And finance is notified if complete, and they issue your check. And that was why you did all of this. That's why you got your license. That's why you came to work for Century 21 Masters. That's why you're working so hard to try to get things going, is so that you can get your check. And of course, make people happy along the way. I love working with buyers from one standpoint. We talked about this the other day, I think, when we were going over the preparation of the contract. And that is that the buyers are so fun to get into their house. I love meeting people with the keys and stuff. I don't like telling them it's hid under a rock or something. I want to be out there. I want to be the rock. I want the key to be in my hand. And I want to be able to let them into their new house and things. And I want to maybe take a picture with my phone to make them feel important, not because I'm going to do anything with it. But anyway, I like to see the looks on people's face when they finally get into a home that they've been trying to get into for a long time. And so from that standpoint, there is happy things that go on during the course of this. The more closely you can follow this checklist and the items that have to be taken care of, the more smiles there will be at the end of it, I promise. Where the other often happens is when half of these things don't get taken care of, or half of these things have problems. So I will tell you two things. I got a chat just a minute ago that wanted to know if this list was available. It is. If you check with the concierge in your office, all of these were emailed out Friday. Well, I don't know if they were mailed out Friday. I gave them to them on Friday. So, but they have them, they should have them no later than already this morning. So you can ask those and you can get this checklist. As well as all of the things that I send out. Every time we have a class that I have paperwork or side paperwork or anything else on, I make sure that the concierge in each office, I don't have 520 emails, and not all the people would want them anyway. But I do send them to the concierge, and they are available through them. So I hope, let me see if there were any other questions. I don't think so. I think the others were all answered. You know, there is a question here, Kimberly. Actually, this is the first class of the contracts that we've actually recorded. I have no idea where it goes from here. Jesse is going to have to fill me in on that, but it's available. I think it's available on our regular C21 Masters website. I think there's a thing there for library. This, I don't know how long it'll take to get this uploaded into that. He's going to be taking care of that sometime today. So probably by tomorrow, this class that we did today will be available online, either for you to review if you feel like you want to, or to tell other people, oh, I wished I'd have gotten to that or something, or I'm glad I slept in, or whatever their situation was. It is supposedly recorded. And in the future, the contract classes you put on there that you were wondering if the RPA class was recorded. And actually it was not. We weren't familiar enough with all of that stuff at the time. However, I think we have, I think in May, and I think it's early in May actually, but I think one of the first contract classes that we have in May is going over pages 1 through 5 of the RPA, what we refer to as the grid. And we'll be going over that class. I hesitate to say, but I think it's one of the first 2 Mondays in May.
Will that be recorded?
If that one will be recorded as well. If we didn't screw this one up, then that's the kicker. We'll figure out whether or not we need a new narrator, or we need somebody else pushing buttons, or what's going on. But if this one works out, then all of the contract classes from now on will be recorded.
Awesome.
If that helps.
Yeah, I work at Starbucks in the morning, so that's why.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll let you all go to work.
Hey, thanks, Jerry.
Hey, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.